I have a note here, sort of capturing maybe this day in New Zealand and ready to go back to Japan and to the US. Talks about Buddhism, Shin Buddhism, Zen, also Christianity, and all the spiritual stuff in one package. But may sound like a random, but I see a connection among them all, and there's a flow, and there's some key point that maybe I can capture. If anybody interested, I am curious to listen to any comment, but let me start. I start with Osono Amyokoni, very well respected person who is illiterate but intuitive to get the core of the Shin teaching of Vo of Amida to save her. So toward the end of her life, she was explaining to her friend, someone recorded this, so that's the hearsay, but she may have mentioned that the life was lots of waste in there. And many people may be disappointed to hear her saying that, but that's a straight, direct impression of her saved by Amida Buddha or awakened in other terms, in Zen, for example, that life is wasted. But because what she has gone through is lots of suffering and delusion, that after the fact, when she's awakened, may be found as a waste. So the notion here is that that's one sentence, but we have to understand that without suffering or delusion, there's no awakening. After the fact, it may look waste, but that's the essence of it. That's okay. We accept everything as it is, and you'll be saved. That's our point. Hakuin is a Zen monk. I think related to Osono's point of wasting lots of effort to get to the state. His saying is, if you're in the water, if you look for water in the water, that's crazy. But that's what we do, is his point. It's a sad situation, but as usual, it's a paradoxical situation. The point is that if you are in heaven, as in the case of Osono, everything is fine as it is. That's the realization after the awakening. There's no fuss around it, no more suffering, delusion. It's easy. So you know when you're thirsty, you drink it, and if you cannot, that's what it is. He accepts that. So that's the Garden of Eden kind of notion. So you go back there after your awakening, but he knows that how to use the word to explain what's going on, except whether we understand or not depends on what level we are in terms of the level of awakening, for example. But the point is that if you realize what's going on, everything is as it is. The law of the universe is manifesting. There's suffering, but that's kind of like a fake. If you realize it, there's a pain, but that's what it is. If you realize it, because that's how we are built in that process. But if we go with the flow of the nature, with the law of the universe, we say, this is what it is. That's the point. I have this Buddha's saying, famous saying that you don't have to carry a raft once you go across the river. No point of bringing the luggage with you. The point of his going across the river, and before that, the story about stream entering and then go through that, all that process. But after the fact, that's like a carrying the raft is a wasted thing. So he's pointing the same, that once you awaken, you are offloaded and just be as it is. That's his point. To realize that is the question of whether we are still in the water looking for the water, whether we are wasting our time and energy, but that's all we can do, and seeking for something which doesn't exist, because life is like a dream, or life is dream, as Shosan Suzuki, a Zen monk, said, but don't realize it. So we think the mind is everything and caught up in it. It's limited. So we have to go beyond. That's the awakening. That's the experiential wisdom. So even if you go through that and explain that, but the explanation may not carry any weight for those who are only caught up in the mind. That's why, what's the point of carrying the ladder or the mind with you? It's a funny mixed feeling you may have, and I may have that too, because Bodhisattva's goal is to help. That's the idea of Amida Buddha, or anyone who is in the process of this Buddhism awakening, a spiritual pursuit. They may see it, but they may come back to the world to help, like a Joshu I may have mentioned elsewhere. Zen monk saying that he go back to the hell instead of going out to the other direction, because that's what he is to do, to work. And that's admirable, and we need. And whether you or me can listen to that or even become one, that's another question. But it's, anyway, that's just a reference about the self-realization, because nobody can help. There are words and ideas, and those I explained already, but without experience, so it's called the experiential wisdom. It's just language, the words on the paper or YouTube or whatever. It's just a raft floating around, but we may not put ourselves in the raft and go across. Just play with the word and the mind and go nowhere. Hope we are not like that, but that's the point of view. So once it's there, you can forget it. But like in my case, I'm playing with the words and trying to make sense out of it for my own sake. So there may be an effort of YouTube, writing, books, or seminars, whatever. And I have gone through that in my management consulting service for 40 years, writing a book and sharing. But the whole point was the awakening, or mini awakening, to realize what's possible in us. Because we have a talent, what's given, and that's the wisdom, the source of energy that can manifest more smoothly if we can get rid of the bottleneck within us or within organization. So that's the work I did in terms of the organization. But this is back to the individual, like my case. It's easier to see for the organization what's going on. Talking to this guy at the top on the shop floor level and different organization departments, so forth. I can fairly easily see the bottleneck because they don't communicate with each other. So outside I can understand much better. So I give that idea, but they may be caught up. They have enough done and progress, so they may want to go any further. That happens. And funny thing is that I realize if I put myself as a receiver of that consultant, in my case as individual, and receiving the teaching of Buddha or whoever, I admire Eckhart Tolle or Daisetsu and all the other people I'm talking about. But that is the relationship with what's the word? Pie in the sky. Yeah, that's the pie in the sky. But you have to eat it. So that's the whole point of exercising and empowered, energized, have the will, go through the barrier, suffering, difficulties, and breakthrough. Organization grow, that's what happens. Don't be complacent, that's one. But each individual can grow, but may become complacent and get lost again. And that happens in the organization, in individual. We are human. So that's the eternal problem we have, and we see that in this situation of the world being lots of chaos and insane, but that's what it is. But the point is that what about us? How we can and be able to share any wisdom if there's a way to do it. Raft, to share the raft, whether it's gonna be floating or sinking, doesn't matter. You may still do it because for your own sake, to build up the strength, the will, passion, energy, moving forward for a better life, and maybe not to the level of Buddha or Osono or whoever, Daisetsu. Lots of wonderful people, but we are still if in the middle of the society and dealing with people. So find our space, figure out so that we can drink the water instead of looking for the water in the water. So, Manuka's word. His word is something like mind move around, but if you know how things move around, we'll find a state where there's no joy or no sorrow. That's his word. I put his word somewhere in my video, I'm pretty sure. So this last point of no joy or no sorrow sounds kind of boring, perhaps, but that's the emptiness kind of a sense, that you don't have a caught up. You are out of the out of the Garden of Eden, but now back in there. So there's no need of dualistic thinking of good or bad and the joy or sorrow. You are at peace with the flow of the universe, with God playing in the sandbox and live the life. But us humans got kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So we're playing with the minds and the rough, different ship, different way, this, that, in confusion and losing ourselves, suffering, delusion. That's who we are. And the life or the world, or we may be insane, but each of us may find a way. Well, I have a comment about the Christianity. My comment here is that someone's talking about the judgment at the end of life or something like that. But my view about the God's judgment, or to say anything about what you have done, therefore you have to go do redemption, whatever the process, I think it applies to your baptism. But my view is baptism is constantly going on, and judgment is constantly going on. That probably is a Zen kind of a pragmatic view. Instead of waiting or going back or go through the ritual, practice baptism, practice death, practice judgment in this way. If we are in delusion, the way from the Buddhist point of view, I hate to say the word Buddhist, but the same way, in a way, is accepted. Eckhart Tolle talks about being in the now, because that's where you are. And that's most important, not afterlife or how you baptize and what it means. It's just a theoretical ritual, dogma-related stuff. But the meaning of those rituals has essence, which is if we apply in a daily basis or in each breath, as I may have mentioned about the milk warning, each breath is breath out is dying, breath in is getting energy back in so that you get vitalized. And after you get vitalized and do the work and be perky and play or do good things, hopefully, or confused, then you go through that learning or dying, so to speak, at the end of the day. And that's from Christianity. I think John and Luke, or whatever I mentioned in the other video, says that daily self die. That's the point. Very close to, if not identical, to Zen way or Shin Buddhism way, that the judgment is constant, that we realize it, accept it, maybe confess and all that, and die. Okay? Because nothing you can do when you're facing death, and then sleep or be in the state of emptiness, just going with the flow. The mind is quiet when you die. And And then, well, next morning or even a few minutes after the breathing out, you, ah, energy is back. Refresh, plain state. What can I do? Well, let's live like a baptism. Clean up the past sins, suffering. Don't carry to the next breath or next day, but live again. Then you get confused, or you may achieve something, may get arrogant, and then, oh, another mistake. So die again. So Myokonin says every breath, and I think there was somewhere else. I just don't remember right now, but it's the same thing. So the point about the judgment, death, and baptism in Buddhism or Shin and Zen way is very much similar. Here's another saying here. In Shin, they talk about afterlife, as in many religions, but right now is funeral, death. That's the point. That's awakening to know that. And unless we are awakened, we don't know it. So we think there may be somewhere down the road and judgment may be made, so you have to behave, which is good. But at the same time, reduce back to the now. What can we do now? And how often can we die? More moment of death, more moment of the realization, more moment of being empty would help us to clean up. Don't carry the luggage over. Well, you wake up and you start to pick up the luggage and start to carry. We do that. Or luggage you didn't know existed, but from the younger days or even previous generations, whatever happened is passed on because of Eckhart Tolle talk about pain body. All the nations, the societies, and tribes may have certain idiosyncrasy, whatever you call it, the habitual pattern, which is like stuck in the past, rather not the raft in the wrong direction, or sinking raft to carry it. So it's no point of sit in the sinking raft, even the floating raft. If you go over, don't carry, right? So the same situation that we should be very careful. So here's a point of Daisetsu talking about. What end up in our spiritual pursuit should be represented as the character of who we are. I'm not a good representative of it, but I understand the notion of it because whatever absorbed has to be played out, not after life, after judgment, but hopefully more often. And if we keep practicing this, that's the whole point. So in my book, I talked about organizational continuous improvement or even organizational enlightenment I talked about. That's endless. I still have company to work with and talk about this kind of idea. So it's very interesting and fun if we can engage ourselves with the idea of the mini company, which is like a mini personality, as I think Deepak Chopra was talking about, the same concept that we have a different means inside of us and they come out in different situations and talk with each other and confusion, so the clarity is not there. So they have some kind of a mirror mind to look at yourself, as much as my consulting role is like my being a mirror to others to see what I see, what can be done, where the pain, what's caused, what's the bottleneck, what can be done. And every visit, we move on. The same thing happened for individual. I'm practicing for myself. I wrote 3 English books and sold quite well. And it's been 40 years from the first one, probably, whatever the time has passed. And what's interesting is what's written there, even with the Dalai Lama giving forward for the 3rd book, Results from the Heart. It's more of an organization, but whole idea can be manifested within us. Instead of mini company and glass bowl management, I talked about in the book. It's a mini me and clarity in the mind, say from the nothingness or mirror mind, to see ourselves in the mirror, to find what can be done. So organization to individual, to within the individual, there's the enlightenment process, awakening process that can happen, should happen. I guess that's the whole point of us to having more aha moment, develop the experience and wisdom, don't carry the rough, be fresh, and move on. I talked about heart and brain, human way and nature's way. I talked about the paradox. I think I captured those without specifically talking about, well, maybe I have, but not specifically connecting to that. But if you're interested, please take a look as much as I'm interested in this. So I keep checking myself and hope to share whatever I can so that I look at my flaw and wisdom to revisit. Maybe the last thing I can say is repetition is the master of the skill. To be mastering to how to live life, plan to check act, or Shila Samadhi Panya. All these great ideas, and dying and refreshed and living again. We need to do that. And hopefully there's something in this message that I can convince myself as much as if you're interested. I'll be interested to listen to your comment. Thank you.